5. Neighbourhoods, places and transport. To achieve the long-term overarching ambition and the high-level outcomes for neighbourhoods, places and transport described in Section 4, this section sets out the detailed outcomes we expect to see over a 10-year period as a result of the actions we must all take to ensure our neighbourhood, places and transport are inclusive, so that disabled people can thrive. Neighbourhoods, places and transport is made up of the following themes: travel, housing, and the social model of disability. Travel. Outcome 1. Accessible transport services. Transport services and travel infrastructure are inclusive, interconnected, and equipped to support disabled people's right to full participation within the communities in which they live and society more broadly. Outcome 2. Supporting staff. Those involved at all levels of the planning, development and delivery of transport services and infrastructure have training and resources available to understand and address the travel needs of disabled people and deliver against their own obligations under equality law and in line with the social model of disability. Outcome 3. Inclusive policy. Policy making involves disabled people in the design and delivery of Wales's transport networks, ensuring that the needs of all disabled people are embedded across transport modes and providers at its earliest stages. Outcome 4. Accessible information. Travel information is available in a range of communication forms, including British Sign Language, designed to enable disabled people to plan, book and embark on their journeys without barriers, and protect their right to seek and receive information. Outcome 5. Effective governance. Establish effective governance mechanisms that focus on delivering inclusive and accessible travel for people in Wales, ensuring that their lived experience is valued and acted upon, working with industry partners and across transport modes. Outcome 6. Climate change and travel. Disabled people are not disadvantaged or excluded by policies supporting net zero. All relevant policies are co-designed with disabled people to ensure their needs and voices are included. Outcome 7. Digital inclusion and technology. Digital platforms, technology and innovations such as websites, apps and assistive support technology are fully accessible and inclusive across all modes of transport to ensure disabled people can independently access real-time travel information and book and undertake journeys without barriers. The outcomes above align to Article 9 of UN CRDP, which sets out that countries need to take appropriate measures to ensure disabled people have access on an equal basis with others to the physical environment, to transportation, to information and communications, including information and communications technologies and systems, and to other facilities and services open or provided to the public, both in urban and in rural areas. The outcomes above align to Article 20 of UN CRDP, which sets out that countries need to take effective measures to ensure personal mobility for disabled people, including facilitating access to various modes of transport, mobility aids and assistive technologies, as well as providing training and encouraging inclusive design in mobility solutions. Inaccessible travel remains a significant issue for disabled people, who often face numerous challenges to inclusive transportation, such as obstructions to pathways and at bus stops, especially those stops that are pull-in, with a lack of dropped curbs, and malfunctioning lifts at railway stations. This is recognised in the Wales Transport Strategy and Plan, which highlights the lack of available, affordable or nearby transport as a barrier to accessing employment, services and leisure to some individuals, in particular older and disabled people who may also require a door-to-door service. These uncertainties can impact disabled people's confidence and trust when moving around communities. Disabled adults or those with a limiting, long-standing illness are less likely to report feeling safe walking in their local area or travelling, 60%, than non-disabled people, 73%, in 2024-25. In an increasingly digital world, ensuring accessible travel requires more than just focusing on physical spaces. Now, individuals must also navigate online platforms and digital ticketing systems to move from one location to another. Accessible and inclusive end-to-end journey planning must improve, and particularly in rural areas where access to transport is often worse. Disabled people often feel their needs are forgotten in the design of transport infrastructure. This can include cycle lanes close to pedestrian walking areas, for example. Research by Guide Dogs UK shows that some cycle lane designs at bus stops pose significant safety risks for people with visual impairments and other disabled people. These designs reduce access to activities and independence and pose considerable risk to disabled people's safety, highlighting the need for better, inclusive transport infrastructure designing and planning to promote active travel, while avoiding these risks and improving access for all. The Welsh Government is committed to improving travel for disabled people in Wales and will commence work to establish its first multimodal Disabled People's Inclusive Travel Panel during 2025-26. This will help ensure that the rights and voices of disabled people are central to shaping transport policies. By integrating their perspectives and expertise, we aim to create an inclusive transport infrastructure that respects and upholds the rights of all disabled people. Some passenger assist schemes are inadequate and fail to recognise disabled people's needs. Transport for Wales, TfW, has a vital role to play in ensuring inclusive and accessible travel for all disabled people using its rail services. Welsh Government will work with TfW to embed the social model of disability, placing the emphasis on removing any barriers into its culture and services by ensuring all frontline staff receive training and information on the model. Bus services, taxis and private hire vehicles are all critical to supporting disabled people's access to essential activities, including work, health appointments and leisure. Taxis and private hire vehicles are often the only way many disabled people can move around their towns and cities due to the lack of fully accessible public transport. We want a taxi and private hire vehicle (PHV) licensing system that is fit for a modern Wales, promotes safety for passengers and drivers, contributes to a cleaner environment, improves the customer experience, and is accessible by all. The Welsh Government is committed to working with disabled people to better understand the existing community transport provision and identify any gaps in transport services for disabled people. Moving around on our transport system in Wales to visit friends and family, get to work, or access healthcare, education and leisure activities is something many of us take for granted. The Welsh Government has implemented a range of policies, frameworks and initiatives to promote safe travel and independence for people with learning disabilities who need it. For rail journeys, we offer the National Passenger Assist Programme, which helps with the planning and undertaking of journeys, as well as a concessionary bus pass for bus travel. Our Orange Wallet scheme is for anyone who may find it difficult to communicate their needs when travelling on public transport and who would like support to communicate with staff when travelling by bus or train. Our Travel for All approach aims to improve real-time information and ensure it is fully accessible, and we are working across government to make sure that people with learning disabilities are represented in our governance frameworks. Delivering a just transition from the current fossil-fueled economy to a low-carbon future will mean developing a clear understanding of the potential impacts of change and making sure these impacts are fairly distributed across society. The Welsh Government's approach to planning for a just transition is heavily linked to the Wellbeing of Future Generations Wales Act 2015, WFGA, which helps us ensure that decarbonisation and climate resilience work is carried out in a way that avoids creating or exacerbating inequalities, and supports a systems approach to understanding and addressing risks and opportunities. The Welsh Government will publish a Just Transition Framework to help policy developers and decision makers consider the wider impacts and opportunities of their plans. The framework achieves this through the provision of a set of guiding principles and through encouraging action in analysing impacts, mobilising stakeholders, and integrating just transition considerations into decision-making processes. As well as reducing our emissions and reaching net zero, we also need to ensure we successfully adapt to our changing environment and are prepared for the profound impacts being caused by climate change. Our Climate Adaptation Strategy for Wales was published in October 2024 and sets out what we are doing across Welsh Government portfolios to respond to the changing climate. The strategy reaffirms our commitment to tackling all forms of inequality, including ensuring teams across Welsh Government consider the voices of disabled people across all of our collective work on climate adaptation, as they should in all areas of policy and delivery. Portfolios across Welsh Government are working to deliver the actions in the strategy. Housing. Outcome 1. Information and awareness. Disabled people are aware of their housing rights and options available to them regarding accessible housing and the provision of supporting services. Outcome 2. Supply and availability of accessible housing. More adapted and accessible housing is available, affordable, equipped, and appropriately located to meet the needs of disabled residents, with sufficient supply of quality accommodation available to help meet demand and reduce waiting times. Outcome 3. Accessible housing services. More accessible housing services, including application processes, are seamless and transparent, operating under a holistic, whole-system approach to reduce barriers to housing for disabled residents and ensuring protection of the most vulnerable groups, e.g., those experiencing homelessness or fleeing violence. Outcome 4. Inclusive policy. Housing strategy and related policy is developed through the involvement of disabled people and considerate of intersectional need. Outcome 5. Effective governance. Housing services and support for disabled people are well governed and held accountable through the relevant mechanisms of monitoring, regulation, enforcement, and data collection. Outcome 6. Supportive staff. All involved in the development and delivery of matters relating to accessible housing, including elected officials, public sector employees, housing providers and landlords, are appropriately informed on the social model of disability and the needs of disabled people. The outcomes above align to Article 28 of the UN CRDP, which sets out disabled people's rights to an adequate standard of living and social protection. It recognises the rights of disabled people to an adequate standard of living for themselves and their families, including adequate housing and access by disabled people to public housing programmes. Having accessible information on housing is crucial for disabled people. Welsh Government is committed to improving access to housing information for disabled people, including those who are digitally excluded. By providing accessible and inclusive information, we can empower disabled people to make informed decisions about where and how they live, and improve equitable access to housing opportunities. This approach helps to prevent loneliness and isolation, promotes well-being and independence, and supports the full inclusion of disabled people in the community. Ensuring disabled people have access to suitable housing is essential for achieving independent living and enhancing their quality of life. Providing quality, accessible homes for disabled people improves health and well-being, supports better educational attainment and other benefits. The lack of affordable and accessible housing limits the options available to disabled people, making it difficult for them to find accommodation that supports their independence. Housing and disabled people, Britain's hidden crisis, EHRC. Adapting existing properties to make them accessible can be too expensive. Many disabled people face financial challenges, and the high cost of necessary adaptations adds an additional burden. Addressing these financial barriers through grants, subsidies, and inclusive housing policies can help ensure that disabled individuals have equal access to safe, comfortable, and accommodating living environments. The Welsh Government is committed to supporting disabled people to live independently in the community. If disabled people need to make changes to their homes, they can apply for support from the Disabled Facilities Grant or our Enable Support for Living Independently scheme. The Enable scheme helps disabled people with grants for adaptations such as grab rails and stair rails, chair lifts, and building an extension. Additionally, the Welsh Government is committed to working with local authorities to improve the accessibility and coordinated delivery of housing adaptations and the supply of equipment. Disabled people can experience serious deterioration in their mental well-being due to living in unsuitable accommodation. The absence of secure accommodation can negatively impact mental health and physical well-being, leading to further difficulties in securing employment and maintaining relationships. The Welsh Government's White Paper on Ending Homelessness identifies disabled people as requiring additional support to reduce the risk of homelessness. Building on the White Paper, the Homelessness and Social Housing Allocations Wales Bill was introduced to the Senedd on the 19th of May 2025. When it isn't safe to stay in their own homes, disabled people and their children facing domestic violence not only need to escape a dangerous environment, but also need to secure accommodation that keeps the families fleeing together and meets their unique accessibility requirements. The Welsh Government recognises the importance of working with local authorities and service providers to improve the provision of accessible accommodation for disabled people, their carers, and their children when fleeing from violence. A lack of accessible and affordable accommodation can negatively impact disabled people, for example from gypsy and traveller communities, limiting their independence and contributing to poorer health outcomes and reduced quality of life. The Welsh Government is committed to collaborating with all communities to understand and address specific housing barriers. Embedding and understanding the social model of disability. Outcome 1. Access to public services. Disabled people's right to live in the community is exercised through implementing inclusive planning and design, ensuring equal access to public amenities, facilities and spaces without barriers. Outcome 2. Inclusive and cohesive communities. Disabled people are represented and able to participate fully within their local communities, with coordination from the public, private and third sectors, ensuring that any new facilities and services that are open to the public reflect all aspects of accessibility for disabled people and their support networks. The outcomes above align to Article 9 of the UN CRDP, which sets out that countries need to take appropriate measures to ensure disabled people have access on an equal basis with others to the physical environment, to transportation, to information and communications. The social model of disability illustrates a different way of thinking about disability and barriers to inclusion. The social model of disability recognises that disabled people have different experiences because of the barriers created by society through inaccessible environments, people's attitudes and values, for example. Under this model, and by removing those barriers, disabled people can participate fully in society on an equal basis, and society benefits from disabled people's full inclusion. This contrasts with the medical model of disability, which views disabled people as unable to take part in society due to their impairments or differences. This viewpoint can negatively impact not only on disabled people's lives, but how some disabled people see themselves, which can discourage disabled people from challenging their exclusion from mainstream society. Embracing the social model of disability helps to create an equitable society where the rights and contributions of disabled people are valued. Through adopting the social model of disability across society, health and social care services can be transformed to provide inclusive and accessible environments for all disabled people. Educational institutions can ensure that all students have equitable opportunities to learn and flourish, and employers can create accessible and inclusive workplaces that utilise the skills and talents of disabled workers. Welsh Government is committed to the social model of disability and ensuring disabled people are involved in the design, implementation and monitoring of relevant new and improved policies, practices and procedures, and do not create barriers for disabled people. By embedding the social model of disability through our training programmes and into everyday practices, we challenge discrimination against disabled people and foster an inclusive and equitable society. We have already provided social model of disability training to over 200 task force and working group members who have subsequently integrated this knowledge into their own policy areas, organisations and everyday practices. Social model of disability training is available through the Welsh Government's Disabled People's Employment Champions and the Business Wales Disabled People's Employment Advisors. An e-learning module for businesses is available on the Business Wales website, and plans are underway to provide an e-learning module for all public sector workers across Wales. The Welsh Government's Equality, Race and Disability Evidence Units work to improve the availability, quality and granularity of evidence about individuals with protected and associated characteristics to help us understand whether our ambition is being achieved for different groups of people. The evidence units are designing and testing standardised survey questions that reflect the social model of disability, which could be incorporated into future data collections and social research. Disabled people have been actively involved at every stage of the research.